This is Mary Ellen Hurtado. We're going to give just a few more minutes before we begin the webinar. We're waiting for several more to join, so give us just a couple more minutes and we'll begin. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Mary Ellen Hurtado with Selig Group, and I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Let It Breathe, 5 Keys to Improving Products, Packaging, and Margins. We hope you find this webinar and the information we provide today informative, educational, and mostly we hope to spark conversations, questions on the benefits of incorporating breathability into packaging. A few housekeeping tips as we go through this. I know everyone in our audience is silenced, but keep your phones quiet if you could, in case we have a glitch in the technology. Today's webinar will be recorded, and a link to this recording will be sent out to all of you following the presentation. During this webinar, we will have a couple of polling questions, and we request that you participate in those. It helps us to get to the right information. Questions can be submitted throughout the webinar, and if time permits, we will do our best to answer at the end of the presentation. However, if we don't get to your question, don't fear, we will respond via email after the webinar. Thank you for your participation. Your presentation, if I could speak today, your presenters today are Michael Linder, Director of Business Development with Selig Group. Michael's been with Selig for 9 years, promoting the value of vented technologies and the value they represent to our global customers. He has been helping companies solve their most difficult packaging challenges for over 30 years in sales management, business development, and marketing. Joining Michael today is Kevin Lahef, Sales Manager at Kaufman Container. Kevin started with Kaufman in 2009 and served in various sales roles, most notably in outside sales for over 10 years. They will be presenting today's webinar, Let It Breathe, 5 Keys to Improving Products, Packaging, and Margins. Our agenda today will cover these topics, and as mentioned, if we don't get to your question today, we will respond after the webinar. And I will now pass this over to Kevin with Kaufman.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Mary Ellen. Again, my name is Kevin Lahef, and I'm the sales manager here at Kaufman Container. We're very excited to be co-hosting today's webinar with a great partner like Selig Group, and I'm looking forward to a very informative and educational webinar. Before we get into our presentation today, I wanted to briefly share some information about Kaufman Container. For those who are not familiar with Kaufman Container, we are a family-owned, one-stop packaging supplier with over 100 years of service. We specialize in stock and custom packaging, utilizing a supplier database of over 500 approved domestic and international partners. We pride ourselves in our value-add approach, offering packaging development, in-house decoration, quality support, and warehouse and logistics services in Cleveland, Ohio. Next slide, thanks. And as I mentioned on our last slide, Kaufman offers full service decoration and graphic design out of Cleveland, Ohio. We offer screen printing, hot stamping, shrink sleeving, and pressure sensitive labeling. As we've seen consumer needs change, we have continually invested in new equipment on our floor to meet the needs of our customers. Most recently, we've added new servo print lines, which allow us to screen print up to 5 colors with precise registration, while also being able to label or hot stamp in line. These lines also allow us to print on unique and challenging shapes, such as squares, rectangles, and ovals. Although we primarily decorate on plastic containers, we do have the ability to decorate on glass and aluminum containers, as well as handle opportunities on tubes and closures. So with that, please keep us in mind should a need arise, large or small. We have the right equipment in place to suit your need. So with that, I'll send it back to Michael here to get started with today's webinar.
Again, thank you, Kevin, and greetings all. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Michael Linder, and I'm Director of Business Development for Selig Group. At Selig Group, we offer a broad range of high-quality sealing and venting solutions for a variety of markets in the rigid container space. Additionally, our laminating capabilities include flexible solutions for consumables and custom engineered laminates for high barrier protective use. But beyond that, why would you choose Selig? 3 reasons. First, customer focus. We are continually improving our products and processes by listening to good customers like you. 2, focus on safety. There is nothing of greater importance than the health and well-being of our employees. At Selig, our policies, our operating practices will safeguard our employees, safeguard our products, our customers, and the general public. And finally, supplier involvement. At Selig, our suppliers are part of our quality team, and the selection of these suppliers is based on their proven ability to continually supply Selig with high quality products and services at competitive prices.
So we will have our first poll question, and I'm going to go ahead and launch that now. And I do request, as a reminder, to participate as much as you feel you can. Our first poll question is, which of the following have you done before to reduce or eliminate container distortion? And we'll give you guys a few seconds to minute to respond. Apologize. I'll let Michael go through the results here. We had about 62% of you respond. So Michael, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. And these results are interesting, and I have to say they are consistent with what I've seen across most industries. I think really the results still somewhat beg the question, perhaps rhetorical. What if you could develop products without regard for the product's impact on its container? What would you do? So today we'll be discussing how breathability allows you to circumvent any trade-offs you may be experiencing. And even if you're not, I think this webinar will help you develop or make your already great products even better. The secret to breathability is EPTFE, or expanded polytetrafluoroethylene. Think of this as a stretched or expanded Teflon. When you stretch it, micropores and tortuous paths are created But these micropores and tortuous paths are so tight, they hold back contaminants, they hold back bacteria, they'll hold back liquid, but they'll allow the bidirectional transmission of gas. So breathable EPTFE eliminates container bloating and paneling. It's useful for dry and wet products, and also useful for dispensing aroma and fragrance at retail, so consumers can smell a product's true scent before they buy it. This material can be attached or affixed to most any type of liner, in this case a specialty liner like lift and peel. And you can see how the vent material allows gas to escape the container or be drawn into the container up through the threads of the neck of the bottle, but while still holding back the liquid even if the bottle gets on its side. EPTFE can be affixed to small plastic components or what we would call press fit vents that are especially popular in the ag chem space. EPTFE can be combined with a variety of unique materials that shield the vent from being clogged, but still allow the vent to breathe. This is an ideal application for ultra thick products like gels or lotions that otherwise couldn't be vented, but are causing a container to panel. In addition, EPTFE can be formatted into temporary venting applications for hot fill products like beverages or sauces that as they cool, they cause their container to panel. With the temporary venting application, it eliminates that paneling, but then once the product is cooled, the vent is sealed. This is an ideal application for any brand looking to transition from glass to plastic or transition into a smooth container. EPTFE can be affixed to gaskets that might go into a trigger sprayer and can be manufactured into roll stock for large cap manufacturers to run vented liner at high speeds and high volumes to possibly reduce supply chain costs, assuming that cap supplier can run registered roll stock. It can also be affixed to extremely small components or cut into rings or donuts and affixed to plastic components in these cases for custom dispensing devices. And EPTFE can be affixed directly to plastics as well, like drain back caps or measuring caps.
Okay, before we go ahead and get started on poll question 2, I just wanted to share with the group, and Michael, I'm not sure that you were able to see the results, but on that first question, what folks have done before to reduce container distortion. Like I said, we had 62% respond, and we had almost a 50-50 split on, added gram weight and used vented liners. 23% of you reformulated, and 27% changed container design. I will go ahead and launch our second question. This question is, what may have kept you from using vented liners or caps to avoid potential container distortion? Venting is ineffective, price, insufficient knowledge, or all of the above? And again, we'll give you a little time to respond to that. We'll go ahead and close the poll now. And for the benefit of Michael and the team and the audience, we had, in response to this question, 44% said they had insufficient knowledge about venting. 28% responded price, and 20% all of the above. So Michael, I'll take it back to you to continue.
Thank you, perfect. And I think we'll be able to adequately address each of these concerns in the balance of the presentation. And certainly if we don't, feel free to ask questions at the end. So we've discussed what breathability or venting is. Let's walk through the 5 keys to improving product packaging and sales and margin. Number 1, breathability eliminates container bloating and paneling. Now, breathability or venting is the only way to eliminate container bloating and paneling. You can add gram weight, you can change the design of the product, and those will mask bloating and paneling for a time, but eventually that bottle will bloat or panel if it is not vented. And certainly if you can eliminate bloating and paneling, package distortion of any kind, which can alter the look of your labels, you're improving your retail presentation, which will also increase sales. Number 2, eliminate trade-offs, those trade-offs of reformulating, changing your package, adding gram weight. If you can eliminate those trade-offs, you'll be able to develop those products and the container that you really want, that customers will love and willingly pay a premium for. All of that will add up to increased sales and margins, certainly justify the cost of venting, and increase your speed to market. We've seen a number of customers who are able to go to market much faster because they weren't having to experiment with reformulating, changing containers. They were able to go to market much faster than they otherwise would. We've got a great case example that I'll share with you later. Mitigating e-commerce package distortion. Certainly if you can eliminate any package distortion, and especially leaking as a result of the altitude changes that occur in e-com, you're going to enhance the consumer experience. And again, that is going to increase sales. Number 4, increase product efficacy. If you can increase the amount of active ingredients that you're using in your products, you're certainly going to improve the product's performance. You're certainly going to increase consumer preference for your product over other brands, and you're going to increase your pricing power. And again, we've got some case examples that we're going to share. And finally, increased product compaction. If you can take water out of your product, you're going to increase your throughput and through the manufacturing or filling process, right? You're going to be filling smaller bottles faster, increases your throughput, reduces your manufacturing costs. You're going to optimize your shipping. You're going to be using smaller bottles, and thus you're going to get more bottles per pallet. That's going to optimize and reduce shipping costs. You're going to increase your retail shelf optimization. How? You're going to have more products in your per square foot because you've got smaller bottles, which increases the potential of increasing your retail sell-through, all of which increases sales and margins, and once again, more than justifies any kind of added expense one might see as a result of adding a vented application. But because we're all about adding value at Kaufman, as well as Selig, here's a bonus key. Choose breathability instead of adding gram weight. Why? You increase your design options. If you can lightweight your bottle and use a more soft or a more supple bottle as a result of allowing the container to breathe, you increase your design options, and that ultimately differentiates your brand at retail. Improve look, touch, and feel. Because again, you don't have to use certain structural enhancements to mask or hide bloating and paneling. You can lightweight your bottle. And as I read this, I'm reminded of a situation where I was working with a customer and they brought out a tray with 24 different combinations of formulations of product, types of resin, and weight of the container. And none of the 24 options were what they wanted. But they were having to do all this testing in order to at least find a bottle that would contain the active ingredients that they were using in their product. And venting was the only solution that allowed them to put the product that they really wanted in the bottle, the package that they really wanted. Consumers can experience products' true scent at retail. I mentioned this previously. Certainly adding gram weight isn't going to do that. That now a consumer can smell a product's true scent through a tamper-evident, leak-proof seal at retail. And we know that scent can increase purchasing intentions by as much as 80%. And you're reducing environmental waste. If you can lightweight your container, use less resin, you're improving your sustainability scores internally, as well as with your good retail partners like a Walmart or a Target. All of these help drive sales and margins. So we've talked about what venting is, and I've just made some bold claims about the 5 keys of improving sales and margins and product with breathability. But Michael, honestly, do you have any real life examples of how breathability affects products in the real world? Here's 3. Breathability makes CPG products better. Here's a high quality niche hair care product whose objective was to contain a combination of highly active natural ingredients in a low cost bottle. They were looking to develop a breakthrough personal care line, but they want to also improve their product launch velocity. In other words, they were having trouble reformulating and getting the product to be compatible with the container that they really wanted to use. And the only solution was a custom vented induction seal. The results, they're able to differentiate their product. They gained a 3-year product launch advantage. They were able to launch this product 3 years ahead of when they otherwise would if they had kept reformulating and reformulating until they found a product that was compatible with the bottle. They were able to increase their pricing power 10 to 300% over other products in their category, and they accelerated $100 million in new revenue as a result of being able to go to market faster. All because of a custom vented application. Case 2, breathability makes bleach products better. Here's a top 5 bleach company that had an objective of product concentration, but also wanted to increase sales. The solution, a custom vented foam liner in a CRC cap. Result, 2x product efficacy improvement, 25 to 40% estimated margin improvement. Again, why? Their throughput in the manufacturing or filling process is faster because they're filling smaller containers. Their shipping costs are reduced because they're getting more containers per pallet, and they're getting increased sales at retail because of their increased sales per square foot. And over 2 billion vents have been applied into bleach containers since 2012 without a single incident of leakage. Case 3, and case 3 applies to a number of organic products, especially in the cleaning space, where the objective again is to increase product efficacy using more of the active ingredients that make a product great. The solution, custom vented foam and an induction seal. The result, 20 to 30% pricing advantage for several products in their categories. Again, more than justifying the expense or the cost of an additional venting application. So we've talked about what venting is. Let's spend a few minutes walking through what breathability and venting isn't, or what I'll call breathability myths. High airflow adds to shelf life. Clearly a myth. The goal in venting is always to achieve just enough breathability. High airflow may degrade a customer's shelf life. So you want just enough breathability to compensate for any buildup or lack of pressure inside the container. And once that container equalizes, you want the breathing to essentially stop, and that will sustain your shelf life. But high airflow is not going to add to shelf life. Number two, if some airflow is good, more must be better. Again, we're always wanting to maintain your product shelf life. You're always wanting to maintain your product stability. So again, you're looking for just enough airflow. So more airflow is not necessarily better. That's a myth. Vent size determines airflow. Myth. What really determines airflow is the size of the pore structure or the holes in the vent material itself. Think of it as a extremely large pipe, but that pipe is covered with a steel cover with a very small hole in it. You're going to get very little air or water or whatever through that tiny hole. But you take this very small pipe and put a loose net over it, you're going to get lots of airflow or water or whatever the case may be. So the vent size doesn't determine airflow. It's the vent material itself that will determine the airflow. Venting replaces fluorination. As a general rule, fluorination is used to mitigate or eliminate product migration through the walls of the container overall. Venting is not going to stop, prevent, or mitigate product from migrating through the walls of a container. It will not replace fluorination. Can it replace or help with the effects of container paneling as a result of a product migrating through the walls of the container? Yes, but it cannot replace fluorination. So Michael, I get it. Understand what venting is, understand what venting isn't. What do we then look for in a quality vented application? In a word, leak prevention. And I'll call this the ABCs of leak prevention. Looking at image A, you're seeing an example of what we call ovulation. Ovulation occurs when there's a hole being punched in the liner, and the membrane or the vent material will go over that hole. But the hole is being punched into the liner, and then the liner advances before the hole punch is lifted out of the liner. And thus the liner is catching on the punch, and the punch is stretching the hole in the liner. That's an indication of poor quality controls. It results in an oval hole, and now you're placing a round piece of vent material over an oval hole, and that can be a source of leaking. Image B. I'll invite you to take a really close look at images 1, 2, and 3 within image B. And you'll notice three things. One, in image 1, you'll see how close that vent is to the edge of the liner, and thus how close it will be to the land area of the bottle. And that land area of the bottle will be extremely hot going through the induction seal process. That heat will damage a vent if the vent is that close to the edge, and thus that'll be a source of leaking. You'll also notice in images 1, 2, and 3 how the vent location is moving throughout the run. Again, an indication of poor quality controls, and if the vent hole is moving, the vent material is moving, certainly that can add variation and thus can result in leaking. And 3, again, I'll invite you to look close at the rough edges around the outside of each vent. We call that flagging. Flagging results of the heat stamp either hitting the liner too hard, which can be a source of leaking, or hitting the liner with too much heat, which can be a source of leaking, or both. And thus you're damaging the liner, and aggressive chemistries can get into the damaged areas and begin to degrade and break down the barrier layers of the liner, again, a source of leaking. What you should look for in a high quality vent seal is what you see in image C. You can see the distance of each vent is virtually exactly the same from the edge of the liner. And you will notice it is a safe distance so that the heat of induction sealing will not damage the vent seal. Notice how uniform each vent hole is. Notice virtually the complete lack of any flagging, again demonstrating superior quality controls and a good quality vent. This seal will not leak, and that's how you get to billions of vented liner over decades with no incidents of leaking. What else should you look for? Here's an example of, yeah, you absolutely have to get and select the most appropriate vent material, but you also want to select the most appropriate base liner itself. Here are two examples where too much cost was probably trying to be taken out of the packaging, and thus they weren't using an induction seal with either a pulp or foam back or a secondary pulp or foam liner that will allow enough pressure on the liners for a good induction seal when it goes through the induction sealing process, right? So when you screw down the caps, creating pressure, the foam backer or the secondary foam liner allows that pressure to be equally applied evenly over the rim of the container and compensate for any variation in the land area of the bottle. If you don't have that sufficient amount of pressure or that additional foam backer or a secondary foam liner or pulp liner, you'll not get equal pressure and you'll end up with disastrous results like this. And I might add, in image one where you see the bag clearly is not preventing leaking. More importantly, it's not preventing whatever has leaked from getting outside the bag. So there's an example of getting a good quality induction seal with a good foam or pulp backer or a secondary pulp or foam liner, giving you a good high quality induction seal. You won't need the bag. And thus there's an opportunity for significant savings because a bag can cost as much as 70, 80 cents. Whereas a good induction seal is going to cost you pennies. Significant opportunity to save money for your e-commerce product sales. So get it, got it? What additional resources might I look for in order to develop the most appropriate venting application for my products? We'll look for a wide variety of testing capabilities. That would include compatibility testing. Is the vent material appropriate for my product and its applications? Optimal airflow testing. Again, you're looking for just enough airflow, just enough breathability or venting so that your shelf life and product stability is maintained. Looking for drop testing. With a high airflow vent material, it can become more fragile. So will it survive a drop test? E-com container testing with or without the product in it. So the effects of e-com can be adequately measured on your bottle with or without product in it, and certainly measure the impact or the effects of rapid altitude changes on the product and the package itself. Product stability testing, somewhat alluded to it previously. You want just enough venting, I'll say it again because it's so important. You want just enough breathability so that your product stability is maintained. And there's tests that can be done to demonstrate that you are achieving that kind of stability in your product. Environmental chamber and accelerated testing. Accelerated testing, we want to be able to quickly demonstrate in collapsed time that your product is going to be stable given the amount of venting or airflow that might be recommended. And environmental chambers to test the effects of heat or cold and extremes on the product and the container itself. Validation testing. It's one thing to be able to make samples for testing in a lab. It's another thing entirely to be able to manufacture that part in quantities of hundreds of thousands or millions. So you want to make sure that the part has been validated or it can actually be manufactured at scale. Look for on-staff lab technicians and engineers that can assist you in the development of your solution, but also help you troubleshoot in the field, both you and your fillers. Look for comprehensive lab test reports. Don't just take the word for it that whatever samples have been developed for you are going to work. Ask for a comprehensive lab report that shows or proves that venting is the right application, or it may show that venting really isn't needed for your particular product. And sampling for your own testing. While many suppliers may have internal labs, it's still important for you as a brand to do your own testing as well. And try to even match your testing protocols with the protocols of your supplier or vice versa.
Well, thank you for that, Michael. Just quickly here, I want to thank everyone for listening in to today's presentation portion of the webinar. I hope you found it informative and insightful like I did. So before we move on to the question portion of the webinar, I just wanted to share a few last comments on Kaufman Container. First, please be sure to visit our website for more packaging resources, such as our blog post or the Kaufman Container College section. We also have a photo gallery on our site, which highlights various packaging projects we've worked on in the past. And lastly, please do follow us on our social media platforms, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel for more informative videos.
Before we get started on these questions, I want to thank everyone that submitted questions during the webinar. We did receive several questions prior to the webinar, and we found some themes that we wanted to address here in these 3 questions that Michael and Kevin will go over. So I appreciate everyone's time that they did take to submit questions during the webinar.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mary Ellen. So question 1, can vents be applied to any style or size of closure? Generally speaking, a vent can be applied to cap sizes up to 120 millimeters. And as a general rule, can be applied to virtually any cap as long as it's somewhat round in nature. We've seen applications that have been applied to oval caps, but as long as the cap is reasonably round, it doesn't have to be round as a circle. It could be like a pentagon or an octagon, but essentially it's somewhat round. Those kinds of caps can also be used. Question 2, what is the first step to take if we are interested in venting our containers? And Kevin, I'll turn that one over to you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I think the short answer to that question is, you can work with Selig or Kaufman, but I think, it really depends on where you're at in the process. As Michael showed throughout his presentation, in some instances you may have packaging already developed and you're not looking to make a packaging change, you just want to investigate whether or not venting is a good option for you. And in that instance, maybe calling Selig is the right option for you. But if you are looking at either starting a new project or making packaging changes along with investigating venting, I would highly recommend you give us a call. We have a very talented team who not only is well versed on the rigid side of packaging with bottles and closures, but also has a lot of experience firsthand working with Selig on vented projects. So I think in short, again, it just depends on where you're coming at from the project, but again, we're happy to work with everyone and make sure we're asking all the right questions to make a successful project launch.
Thank you, Kevin. And question 3, do we send caps to Selig Group or Kaufman Container for venting, or do you provide vented liners to cap manufacturers? Answer is yes. You may have already have a cap in mind and procure that yourself. You can send that to the Selig Group and we can line your cap. You can have Kaufman Container procure the cap for us, and Selig Group can vent or line that cap. We can also provide those cap suppliers who can run registered roll stock. We can provide them vented liner in roll stock. Barry with a Y can run registered roll stock. Barry cap with an I can run registered roll stock. Yorker, Van Blarcom, MRP. So registered roll stock liner can be provided to certain cap manufacturers. So basically, Selig Group and Kaufman can develop the supply chain around what makes the most sense for you. Mary Ellen, any other questions we might have?
We did get an additional one that I think you could shortly answer. You did speak to some of this, but we have a question around allowing gas transfer can lead to oxidation of the sealed product or shorten shelf life. That's a question.
Can it?
Can
Yes.
it? Yeah.
So yes. So can it over time? Yes, it has the potential. And that's why I get to two recommendations. One, always test it. And working through Kaufman, we can test your product and demonstrate whether it will or will not oxidize, whether your shelf life is or is not being compromised. We can provide you a report that will tell you yay or nay. So always at least test, and testing doesn't cost you anything, it's free. Secondly, sure, over time, yes, it could oxidize a product that does have that potential. And thus, I get to that, boy, just enough venting is what is critical. And we can do accelerated testing to determine how quickly or how long the product is stable or how much shelf life you'll get out of it before a product oxidizes or gets altered at all.
Thank you for that, Michael. I think we could go ahead and we'll deal with any other questions that came, post the webinar. So if you want to go ahead and advance. To the audience here, I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining the webinar today. It was a lot to cover, but we will be doing a follow-up by sending a link to the recording of this presentation so you can take your time going through it and following up with those who submitted questions either that we didn't get to, as well as during this webinar via email. So this concludes today's webinar, Let It Breathe, 5 Keys to Improving Products, Packaging, and Margins. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.